Hold on a little longer. God's timing is perfect. Those words may seem simple, yet they carry a profound truth that can transform the way we live our lives. So often, we are tempted to look at the circumstances around us and decide for ourselves what is right or wrong, what is too late or too early. We become impatient when doors remain closed, when prayers seem unanswered, and when life does not move at the pace we desire. But in those moments, it is essential to remember that God is not constrained by our schedules, our expectations, or even our understanding of what is best. His timing is perfect, and His ways are higher than ours. The challenge is learning to trust Him even when everything in us wants to rush ahead, force an outcome, or walk away from the promise that has not yet arrived. There is a story in the Bible that illustrates this principle beautifully. Consider Abraham and Sarah. They had waited for decades for the promise of a child, for the fulfillment of God's word. They grew old, their bodies weary, and yet the promise lingered like a distant star on the horizon. At times, doubt must have crept into their hearts, and at times impatience must have whispered in their ears. Yet they held on. They trusted God, even when the natural evidence seemed to contradict His promise. And in God's perfect timing, long after the world said it was impossible, He fulfilled His word and Isaac was born. This story reminds us that the passage of time does not diminish God's faithfulness. In fact, it often amplifies it. Waiting is not passive. It is not idleness or resignation. It is an active state of faith where we continue to live, to pray, to obey, and to trust, even when we cannot see the outcome. Holding on longer means refusing to give in to despair when the road is difficult. It means choosing to believe that God sees the bigger picture, even when our vision is limited. It means understanding that delays are not denials, and pauses are not rejections. Sometimes God allows waiting because He is preparing us, shaping our character, and equipping us for what lies ahead. Every moment of waiting carries a purpose that we may not immediately comprehend. We live in a world that values speed and instant results. From the messages that arrive in seconds to the solutions that are expected overnight, patience can feel like a foreign concept. Yet the divine rhythm is different. God moves according to a timeline that is designed for our ultimate good, not our immediate comfort. The seasons of waiting, though difficult, are often necessary for the growth that will sustain us once the door opens. Like a tree that takes years to mature, bearing fruit only in its season, we too must be nurtured, strengthened, and made ready for the blessings that God has prepared. Holding on a little longer also requires a shift in perspective. We may look at our circumstances and see only obstacles, setbacks, and closed doors. But God sees opportunities, divine appointments, and paths that we cannot yet perceive. What appears to us as a delay may, in God's wisdom, be a time to redirect our steps, to deepen our faith, and to cultivate a heart that is prepared to receive His best. Patience in God's timing is an expression of trust. It is saying, Lord, I may not understand, but I believe You are faithful. I may not see the way, but I know You are guiding me. I may not have the answer, but I trust that You do. Faith is not measured by the absence of difficulty. It is measured by the decision to hold on when everything around us urges surrender. To hold on a little longer is to acknowledge that God is at work behind the scenes, orchestrating events, opening doors at the precise moment, and fulfilling promises that may seem delayed, but are never forgotten. Every trial, every season of waiting, and every unanswered question is a part of the divine plan. God's timing is perfect because it is sovereign, purposeful, and full of love. It is easy to become discouraged when life does not move according to our schedule. We see others receiving blessings that we desire, and we wonder why our prayers remain unanswered. We face setbacks, obstacles, and delays, and the temptation to give up becomes strong. Yet it is precisely in these moments that holding on is most crucial. The promise that is delayed is not denied, the answer that is postponed is not refused, and the door that remains closed is not locked forever. God's timing is perfect, And waiting upon Him is not wasted time. It is preparation, purification, and positioning. Waiting is not a passive state. It is a season of preparation and refinement. Many people struggle to understand this because waiting often feels uncomfortable, frustrating, and even discouraging. When we are in the midst of uncertainty, when our prayers seem unanswered and our plans delayed, it is natural to feel restless, anxious, and impatient. Yet it is in these very moments, in the quiet spaces between the now and the not yet, that God is at work shaping our hearts, minds, and spirits for what is to come. Waiting is never wasted. Every day, every trial, every moment of delay is purposeful, designed to prepare us for the doors God is about to open in our lives. Consider the refining process of gold. Raw gold is buried, hidden, and covered in impurities. It must go through fire and intense heat before it shines with brilliance. The fire does not destroy the gold. Rather, it removes the dross and perfects its value. In the same way, God often allows seasons of waiting to remove the things in our lives that would hinder us from receiving His best. Our patience is tested, our faith is stretched, and our hearts are purified so that when the right opportunity comes, we are ready to step into it with wisdom, integrity, and strength. Waiting refines our character, revealing the hidden weaknesses that need God's touch and strengthening the parts of us that will bear fruit in His kingdom. The Bible gives us many examples of individuals who experienced waiting as preparation. Joseph, sold into slavery by his own brothers, spent years in prison before he was elevated to a place of power in Egypt. During those long years of waiting, he could have succumbed to despair, but instead he remained faithful, patient, and steadfast in God's presence. Each season of waiting was shaping him, preparing him for the responsibility, wisdom, and compassion he would need to save not only his family, but an entire nation. Joseph's time in the prison was not wasted. It was a necessary period of preparation for the moment when God's plan would unfold perfectly. Similarly, consider Moses, who spent 40 years in the wilderness before God called him to lead the Israelites out of Egypt. The time in the wilderness was not idle. It was a season of preparation, teaching him humility, dependence on God, and patience. Without that time of waiting and refinement, Moses would not have been equipped to fulfill the monumental calling God had placed on his life. Waiting prepares us not just to receive, but to act responsibly and faithfully when God opens the next door. Waiting also teaches us to rely on God's strength rather than our own. It reminds us that we are not in control and that our timing is not the final authority. When we try to rush, we risk stepping into situations unprepared, making choices that are impulsive or misguided. But when we embrace the season of waiting as a time of preparation, we begin to develop discernment, patience, and a deeper understanding of God's ways. We learn to trust that His plan is perfect even when it seems delayed, and that He is orchestrating events behind the scenes for our ultimate good. During waiting, we are also refined in our faith. Trials, setbacks, and delays can feel heavy, but they strengthen our spiritual resilience. Like a tree whose roots grow deeper in the soil to withstand storms, our faith grows stronger when it is tested. We learn endurance, humility, and perseverance. We discover that our hope is not dependent on circumstances, but on the unchanging nature of God. Waiting is an opportunity to cultivate intimacy with God, to deepen our relationship with Him, and to recognize that His presence is sufficient even when the promises have not yet materialized. Furthermore, waiting allows us to prepare our hearts for the blessings that are coming. Without preparation, we might take what God gives us for granted or misuse it. But in seasons of waiting, God cultivates gratitude, patience, and wisdom. He teaches us the lessons we need, molds our character, and positions us to step into His plans with readiness and discernment. Waiting is not a pause in God's work. It is an active, purposeful season of refinement. Sometimes we must remind ourselves that the things God is preparing us for are bigger than we can imagine. The delay is not denial. The waiting is not punishment. It is a necessary process for shaping us into vessels can carry the fullness of what God intends. Every trial, every delay, every challenge is like a sculptor's hand chiseling, polishing, and perfecting us for the masterpiece that is about to be revealed. Patience, faith, and trust are cultivated in the crucible of waiting, producing a strength and maturity that cannot be achieved any other way. Sometimes in life, we find ourselves standing in front of doors that refuse to open. We knock, we plead, we try every key we can find, yet the door remains shut. It can feel discouraging, even heartbreaking, especially when we have worked hard, prayed earnestly, and waited faithfully. We may begin to wonder if God has forgotten us, if our efforts are in vain, or if the opportunity we desire will ever come. Yet it is precisely in these moments, when every human expectation has been exhausted, that God is quietly at work, orchestrating new doors that we cannot yet see. Just because a door is closed does not mean God has abandoned us. It often means that He is preparing a far better opportunity, one that aligns perfectly with His plan for our lives. We live in a world that values immediate results. If a door remains closed, we are tempted to assume that it is permanently shut or that we are meant to turn back. But God's perspective is vastly different from ours. He sees the beginning, the middle, and the end all at once. What seems like a closed door from our point of view may actually be a redirection, a preparation, or a protective measure from God. Sometimes doors close to prevent us from entering something that is not good for us, to guide us toward what is better, or to preserve us from harm. God's timing and His choices are perfect, even when they contradict our own desires. Consider the story of Peter in the New Testament. After the death and resurrection of Jesus, Peter was unsure of his purpose and faced many challenges. He had experienced failure, denial, and confusion. From a human perspective, the doors to meaningful ministry seemed close to him. Yet God was orchestrating events in Peter's life, preparing him for the monumental role he would play in spreading the gospel. The closed doors Peter faced were not permanent barriers. They were part of a divine plan that would open the way for his greatest impact. God's orchestration of doors, closing some and opening others, is always purposeful and designed for our ultimate good. Closed doors are not always rejections. They are invitations to trust God more deeply. They call us to faith, patience, and obedience. When one door remains shut, it is an opportunity to seek God's guidance, to align our hearts with His will, and to prepare for the doors He is about to open. Often the closed doors lead to pathways we could never have imagined. Doors